Detroit, we need to talk. Because just when you thought Brad Holmes was finished building this roster, just when you thought the Lions had said their final word of the offseason, the man goes and pulls off one more move that has the entire Lions nation buzzing tonight. Welcome back to Detroit Scope, the channel grinding every single day to bring you the fastest, realest breakdown of everything happening in Honolulu Blue. And if you're new here, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button because we're on the hunt for 1,000 subscribers and every single one of you gets us closer. Now let's get into it because this is a big one. All off-season long, Brad Holmes has looked reporters dead in the eye and said the same thing over and over. He is not done building this football team. Everybody nodded along, half believing him, half assuming it was just GM talk, the kind of thing every front office executive says in July to keep the fan base hopeful. Well, it turns out Brad Holmes was not playing games. He meant every word. Because on a Saturday afternoon that was supposed to be quiet, that was supposed to be just another day of training camp reps and preseason build-up, the Detroit Lions dropped a bombshell that nobody outside the building saw coming. They're signing linebacker Devin White. Yes, that Devin White. The former 5th overall pick. The former second-team All-Pro. The former Pro Bowler. The man who has a Super Bowl ring on his finger from tearing through the AFC and NFC on Tampa Bay's historic 2020 championship run. A run where he didn't just show up. He made winning plays on the biggest stage in football, including an interception of Patrick Mahomes himself in Super Bowl 55. That resume alone is enough to make Lions fans sit up straight in their chairs. But here's the twist, the part of the story that makes this signing so fascinating. Devin White has not exactly been on a smooth ride the last few seasons. And that is precisely why Detroit might have just found themselves a steal. Let's rewind the tape for a second, because to understand what the Lions are getting, you have to understand the roller coaster that has been Devin White's career. Tampa Bay took him 5th overall out of LSU back in 2019, and it did not take long for him to look like a superstar. By his second season, he was a menace, tallying a career night of 140 tackles, 9 sacks, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery, earning himself second-team All-Pro honors while helping the Buccaneers hoist the Lombardi Trophy. The following year, in 2021, he backed it up with a Pro Bowl selection. For a stretch there, Devin White looked like the future face of Tampa Bay's defense, a homegrown superstar who was going to anchor that unit for a decade. But football is a cruel business, and things can unravel fast. As his production started to dip and his reputation for missed tackles and coverage lapses started to follow him around the league, the Buccaneers and White found themselves at crossroads. Reports at the time suggested White was looking for a contract in the neighborhood of $100 million, a number the front office was not willing to meet given his trending production. Tampa Bay balked, benched him late in the season, and when free agency hit, they let him walk out the door. What followed was a journeyman stretch that would have broken a lot of players mentally. He signed with the Philadelphia Eagles in 2024, but never even suited up for a regular season snap before getting cut loose. He bounced to Houston for the back half of that season, appearing in just 7 games. It looked, for all intents and purposes, like Devin White's once promising career was quietly fading into irrelevance. And then the Las Vegas Raiders took a flyer on him in 2025, and something clicked. White started all 17 games for the Raiders, the first time he played a full slate since 2022, and he put together arguably the most productive tackling season of his entire career. We're talking 174 total tackles, 3rd most in the entire National Football League, trailing only a small handful of players, including, interestingly enough, Detroit's own Jack Campbell. Add in 11 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, 7 quarterback hits, 3 forced fumbles, and an interception, and you have a linebacker who proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that he still has plenty of football left in the tank. In fact, White became just the 13th player since 1994 to record at least 170 tackles in a single season. That is elite, historic company. But, and this is where the tabloid twist really comes into play, not everything about that Raiders tape is glowing. Advanced metrics and film grades painted a much murkier picture. Devin White has never posted a Pro Football Focus grade above 57.0 in a single season of his career, and his 2025 campaign with Las Vegas was no different. He still struggled mightily in coverage. He still had issues with missed tackles despite piling up the raw numbers. In other words, Devin White is a walking contradiction right now. A stat sheet monster who racks up tackles by the truckload, but a player whose efficiency and technique have never quite caught up to his athletic gifts. Some analysts are going to look at this signing and see a former superstar rediscovering his game at the perfect time to help a contender. Others are going to look at the same tape and see a player who benefits from high volume on a bad defense, someone who racks up garbage time stats without actually elevating winning football. The truth, as it usually does, probably lives somewhere in between. So why Detroit? Why now? The timing of this move is almost too perfect to be a coincidence. And that is because it is not one. Just one day before the Devin White signing broke, Detroit's own rookie linebacker Jimmy Rolder left practice early after rolling up his leg, an injury that immediately sent a ripple of concern through the fan base. The Lions have not disclosed the full extent of Rolder's injury, only saying he is expected to miss a little time, but not an extended amount. That can mean a few days. It can mean a couple of weeks. Nobody outside the training facility knows for certain. But what we do know is that Brad Holmes does not sit around and wait to find out. The very next day, he is on the phone working out a deal with a Super Bowl champion linebacker who is sitting there in free agency, still looking for a home. That is not panic. That is not desperation. That is a general manager who has shown all offseason that he refuses to leave a single stone unturned, who treats every roster crack like an opportunity to upgrade rather than a problem to patch over. And when you step back and look at the bigger picture of this Lions linebacker room, the fit starts to make a whole lot of sense. Jack Campbell has already established himself as one of the very best linebackers in the entire National Football League, regardless of position, a true difference maker in the middle of this defense. Derek Barnes has reportedly trimmed down and picked up speed heading into this season, flashing more explosiveness in camp reps. Jimmy Rolder, even while banged up, represents part of the young talent infusion this defense has been building. Now add in a former All-Pro who just posted one of the most productive tackling seasons of his career, and suddenly Detroit's linebacker core looks less like a question mark and more like a legitimate strength. This is a room with speed, physicality, championship pedigree, and now genuine depth. If Rolder's injury lingers even a little bit, Devin White slides in as a battle-tested starter without missing a beat. And if Rolder bounces back healthy, White becomes one of the most dangerous depth pieces in the entire NFC, a player capable of pushing for snaps and forcing competition at every level of that front seven. This move also fits perfectly into the philosophy Dan Campbell has hammered home since the day he walked in Allen Park. Stop the run first. Get pressure on the quarterback second. Everything else follows from there. The Lions have been adding pieces to that front seven all offseason, beefing up the defensive line, adding competition, and now stacking the linebacker room with proven physical talent. Everyone around this organization, the players, the coaches, the front office, the media, the fans, seems to agree on one thing without much debate. This Lions offense is going to score a ton of points in 2026. The real question, the one that will define this entire season, is whether the defense can rise up and meet that offense in the middle. It does not even have to be an elite unit. If this Detroit defense can climb into the middle of the pack league-wide, somewhere around 15th overall, that alone might be enough for this team to do serious, sustained damage in the NFC North, across the NFC as a whole, and deep into the postseason. And if the Lions can somehow sneak into the top 10 defensively, buckle up, because that is a team capable of running the table. Now, let's talk contract, because the terms here tell you everything you need to know about how both sides are approaching this. This is a one-year deal, a prove-it contract, low risk for Detroit, and a fresh opportunity for White to rebuild his stock heading into an important year of his career. At 28 years old, Devin White sits in a strange, fascinating middle ground. He is not a young and proven prospect anymore. He is not washed up or over the hill either. He is smack in the middle of his prime, a player with a proven ceiling, a well-documented floor, and everything to prove after bouncing between 4 different organizations over the last 3 seasons. Nobody has kept Devin White around for very long recently, and that has to weigh on him. But given the right scheme, the right locker room, the right coaching staff, and there's a very real chance he rediscovers that all-pro form that made him a household name back in Tampa. Detroit, with its stability, its championship aspirations, and its reputation for player development under this coaching staff, might be exactly the environment he needs. Of course, we cannot ignore the human, unpredictable side of the NFL business either. As training camp rolls on and the calendar creeps closer to the mandatory roster cutdowns in a couple of weeks, expect Brad Holmes to keep working the phones. That is simply who he is. Do not be shocked if this is not the last surprise of the summer. There's a very real chance Holmes moves on from a player or two who does not make the final cut in order to acquire other pieces via trade. And there's an equally real chance he circles back to sign a player or two who is still sitting out there in free agency, waiting for the right opportunity, avoiding the grind of the early days of training camp. Brad Holmes has made it abundantly clear this offseason. He is building, tweaking, and optimizing this roster right up until the very last possible second. Nothing is finished until it absolutely has to be. The fan reaction since the news broke has been overwhelmingly positive, and honestly, it is hard to blame anyone for getting excited. A Super Bowl champion, a former All-Pro, a player who just posted the third most tackles in the entire league, walking into a linebacker room that already features one of the best players at his position. That is the kind of move that makes a fan base believe their front office is truly all in. Sure, there are questions. Sure, the film grades raise some eyebrows. Sure, some will point out that his best days might be behind him. But others will tell you Devin White is just getting started on the next chapter of his career, and Detroit might be exactly the stage he needed to prove all his doubters wrong. So here's where we land. The Detroit Lions did not just add a body to training camp. They added a Super Bowl champion, a former All-Pro, and one of the most productive tacklers in the entire league last season, all on a low-risk, one-year contract at the exact moment their linebacker depth took a hit. That is not luck. That is not coincidence. That is a front office executing a plan with precision, turning a moment of adversity into an opportunity for improvement. Whether Devin White becomes the missing piece that pushes this Lions defense over the top, or simply serves as championship-tested insurance behind Jack Campbell and Derek Barnes, one thing is undeniable. This roster keeps getting deeper, this front seven keeps getting scarier, and Brad Holmes is not slowing down for anybody. Detroit, this is shaping up to be one of the most electric seasons in franchise history, and Detroit Scope is going to be right here bringing you every single update, every single signing, every single twist along the way. If you love breakdowns like this one, if you want to be locked in on everything Lions before anybody else in your group chat, do not scroll past without hitting that subscribe button. We are chasing 1,000 subscribers, and we cannot get there without you. Drop a comment down below and let us know, is Devin White going to be a difference maker for this Lions defense? Or is this just camp body depth dressed up as a headline? Hit that like button, share this video with a fellow Lions fan, and we will see you in the next one. One Pride, Detroit. Let's ride.